Okay, so calling to order the February 14th, town meeting of the Tukwila School Board. And we have go down the list of who's here.
Dan Wojdak, District 2.
Steve Larson, District 5,
Evan North, District 4.
and since we don't have a president, it's not online, is that correct?
Correct.
So we got 3, that's good enough for a quorum. Welcome to our guests, even though they're so far away.
I know, do we have? If they come up. I
think that would-
can't see that if they.
Yeah, we need to see that. Okay, welcome message. Agreements. So, Director Hoover is excused tonight, so I'll start off with the agreements that we have from the Courageous Conversation books. Stay engaged, experience discomfort, be vulnerable, speak your truth, expect and accept non-closure. And then we have our land recognition, which is we have the Tukwila School District acknowledge that the land where we teach, collaborate, learn, and play is the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people, past and present, in honor with gratitude. The land itself and the Duwamish and Muckleshoot tribes. As a public school district, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land, and we recognize the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people who have been living and working here since time immemorial. The flags. We not have a flag.
Do we have a flag in here, Michael?
I suppose we can dispense with that. If there's no flag.
It's okay, Michael. It's okay.
I could put one on screen.
Yeah. So we'll not do the flag salute tonight in absence of a flag. Let's see, I need approval of the motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. Agenda is approved unanimously. And now we haven't been here for what, 3 years or something, so it's great to be back in Thorndike and turn it over to Principal.
Good evening, board members. First, we'd like to start off this evening in recognition of Black History Month, a famous quote from Rita Pierson, the late Rita Pierson. Every child deserves a champion or an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists on becoming the best they can possibly be. One of the things we'd like to feature tonight, and we're very proud as a staff, is our growth in iReady. We've made a lot of growth this year. When we look at from January from 2022 to 2023, we have a 16% increase in our last diagnostic. We understand that there's a little bit of a dip in first grade, and we've been working with our MTSS team and with our interventionists to address that and looking at the priorities that are outlined in the SIP plan to address the basic foundational skills, which will be important for kids that are students who are growing up and moving up into the later grades. So we're really putting a strong emphasis on those. Restructuring the K-5 reading groups and include direct phonics instruction, implementing the evidence-based practices such as Walk to Read, which will be starting, which has started this year. The team read will be starting in March, mid-March, early to mid-March this year. So we're really excited about that. And we're going to be targeting students who are showing the least amount of growth. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Sibley and Ms. LaRocca in terms of our iReady accomplishments and awards.
Hi, Sam Zimley, math interventionist at Thorndike. It's my 7th year. Yeah, so this slide here is showing the accomplishments and awards. So we're proud of the students at our school that have made that 10-point or more. 10 points of growth in iReady math and reading, as well as we've already that made that goal of 25 points. And we are going to award them with certificates on our Student of the Month assembly, which is Friday, February 24th. And you're more than welcome to come. It's at 12:45, and so we're honoring every student that's made 10 points or more, or 25, and then, of course, that the goal of the whole year is to get 25 points. And a lot of the kids have already made it. So we're very proud of them. We want to honor them during that time.
And I'm Brittany LaRocca, I'm the reading interventionist here. I'll be the site coordinator of Teen Read, so I'm really excited that we're starting that program in March. And again, we're really excited to celebrate our growth of reading and math and our accomplishments. So we're going to do that during the assembly.
Can you tell us more about Team Read?
Sure. So we're starting the training this week, and then next week, the coaches, we have high school students coming in for the coaching. So I selected about 25 students that are below grade level in reading. And we're going to use different programs like RAS Kids, and we're using the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment system to see where they're at, and then collect data throughout the program. It's twice a week.
Is it after school?
It is after school, 3:30 to 4:30, yeah, twice a week. So, yeah, we're excited for that.
Are these foster high school students or?
Yeah, foster high school students, yeah.
Okay.
And so we've did a wonderful, I don't know if y'all saw when you walked in, our mood meter, which we've been focusing with our ruler. And so Ms. Goodman and Mr. Kaufman.
Here so I can see the audience.
So,
So unexpectedly, you guys had one comment. You said the first grader was kind of low, but I noticed it's actually first grade at every elementary school. So I'm, that's kind of a district level question that I may ask. What's going on in first grade, because it's not just here. Anyway, okay. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. So I really encourage, when you're able to go look at it in person, we have it hung in our big window over there, with lighting and everything. Mr. Kaufman did an installation for y'all. So I approached Jeff about doing a collaboration with the mood meter, feelings, and arts. I don't know if you even remember, I had a conversation years ago about feelings and colors and arts. And so we got together and kind of meshed feelings and the mood meter and art. And so if you could go to the next slide, please. We decided to work with the 5th grade classrooms, and that was Mr. Kaufman's call. And you can run through the next couple clips, just showing some examples of the end products. Some of the examples of different feelings in the mood meter that came from the project. Yeah, pretty cool. So the first thing we did, we only had 2 different times we were able to meet with a student. We only have him sadly for 2 weeks at a time. So this was like turbo, yeah, the turbo project. So first we reviewed the mood meter with the students. They're all very familiar with the mood meter, but wanted to make sure if we had new students, that they understood the mood meter and were well versed in all the different feelings and colors. I have brought all of you and all the audience little mini mood meters for your lanyards if you like. I'll pass those out. And what just went through the different colors and wanted to make sure before we did the art project that they knew exactly the feelings that comprise the different quadrants in the mood meter. And then if you click for us, you'll see a couple more pieces of art that came about. And then Mr. Kaufman took over and talked about all of your
Okay,
amazing art.
so then, real fun lesson. I really learned a lot about the movie or doing the movie. Like, I can reference it to the students when they're doing the work. I'm in the red. I'm in the green. And so I needed to come up with an artist that shows mood. And Picasso was a really good choice because he had a blue period, right? Are you familiar with Picasso? So he had his blue period when I told him the story about how his friend died. And you started creating with lots of blues and purples and so forth, we could really relate to that. And you can see it in their faces, you know, they're like, yeah, I get this guy. And so right here are some examples of some of the blue students. They didn't have to be sad for the blue, they just, we assigned them to different colors. And Picasso was great. So we also looked at, Picasso, we go into people with Picasso living this like cubist period, so you might notice a lot of the faces that are sort of looking one direction and they're looking from the side view, the front view. So that was Picasso's idea, was looking at the same subject matter from multiple points of view. So let's click a couple of those on there.
I can add quickly, Mr. Kaufman did a really great job of talking to the students about what blue eyes look like, what blue mouth and blue forehead and blue ears. It was really kind of amazing to watch him work with students and really, I learned a whole lot too, so.
I'm sure we put a lot into 2 short periods, which we could have stretched it to 3. And go ahead and click the next slide. This is sort of a breakdown of the materials we used. Each student was assigned a color of the 4 colors. We got red, green, yellow, and blue. And we didn't let them pick. Okay, that was the deal. We're gonna give it to you. You get to be creative with it, but you're gonna be acting like an illustrator. So I kind of explained what an illustrator was. Sometimes you can still be creative at the same time. You're gonna get an assignment. Okay, so you're still able to express yourself. And then these are the materials we used. We sketched with pencil. We outlined it with Sharpie, and then we went in, dug in with the colors with oil pastels. Seemed to be the most obvious choice. And click the next slide. The color wheel was the planning device. So once we got to the oil pastels part of the lesson, they were given, you know, we said, hey, you're yellow. You can pick between these 2 right here. Okay. You're green, this is your zone right here. So it was an analogous color scheme. And most of them followed it, but if you look at the mood meter, there's some yellow faces that have red tongues. So it's kind of let it go. And white and black were neutral. So I said you can use them all. So black was supposed to be used for the outlining. If I would have done it again, I would let them use black to shade, but I thought black was going to overtake it because black mixed in oil pastels was kind of muddy. So, but then I was like, no, we could use black for like some of the features. Anyhow, we move on to the next slide. It's the grand finale slide. So here it is. So now you have an opportunity to check your mood. Look at the mood meter for a moment. Where do you feel it? Which face is yours? And we got it up there, as Ms. Goodman says. And I think it was a great opportunity for the 5th graders to be of service to the school. Because they're doing something that, you know, a little kindergarten, Ms. Goodman, you know, trouble kindergarten, come up and sad and walk them over there. Where are you on here? And they can see from a real authentic place that these are the 5th graders that did this for you, so that you can check your mood.
I love that you use Picasso too, because then it isn't about making the perfect drawing.
Yeah.
The representation and stuff, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that was what bringing Picasso. I think I did show him the rose period drawing, but his rose period it wasn't as like obvious as yeah, it was like clowns and you're like looking at these like early 20th century clowns, you're like, I don't get it. But they totally got the.
So I'm curious, so in some versions of the movie, there's words and all these things. I assume that the words, these like 16 different faces in yellow, I assume those are not connected in a particular.
Not the specific drawings, no, we
Yeah.
would have expanded on that if we had more time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't, so. It's
But
a
there's
start.
all those, there's 16 different words that are different kinds of.
Exactly,
Yeah.
different levels of
Different
energy and
levels,
stuff within the meter
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
that we can expand on. Maybe not too.
The other idea that I found was, so you're hooking this to art. So what if we, like, how do you feel about math? How do you feel about reading? How do you feel about social, you know, how do you feel
Absolutely.
about recess? How do you feel?
Well, and reading is a natural
Yeah,
literature
yeah,
and natural, like, what are characters feeling in this
Right.
moment? And I think it's a natural connection. So absolutely, you can take this so many different places, so, yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Great job.
We still look at it.
And I think the other one part, too, on the school.
It's time, it's so precise.
Oh.
Charlie's here.
Oh, so we have, Patrick, we're online. Did you see any of that presentation? Speculative? Maybe, it's a lot of-
I think maybe I heard someone say my name, not sure. Hi, everyone. So sorry to not be there in person. I did get to see that amazing display of art. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing that.
Okay, great, that was the question. Okay, public comment. Do we have any signups for that? Or
No signups.
anybody who's online is welcome to either raise their hand or put something in the chat that said you want to do a public comment. Okay, not seeing any, we'll have another opportunity at the end of the meeting if anybody is interested in doing that, either as a result of something they hear in the meeting or something they thought about previous, you can do that. Okay, so let's move on to the reports, race and equity update. Dr. Brennan, or-
Yes, I'll provide this one tonight, just to update a couple things and then as we report again, I'll try and have different people, the next one. A few things in our recent equity side. We had our trainers from San DSD working with the staff in the districts. They were here at the beginning of February for a makeup date that we had missed in December. One of our presenters wasn't feeling well, so we made up for that. And what we had reviewed was some information and discussion around the book Cast. If you haven't had the opportunity to read that, that's actually coming up for the board on March 11th. So that's what we're going to be doing, basically the same piece in there. Very good and powerful discussion about that, a lot about how we view kind of the caste system and they go through all that. I don't want to preface too much of that because I think it's more powerful as you go through it. If you don't have anything in mind going in, so I think it'll be really good. There's also an opportunity, I think they wanted to, the chief presenters want to reach out to board members before we have that meeting as well, so we're going to get those times scheduled for the board members to touch base.
It's interesting because I think the word caste is actually used in our constitution as it relates to education, so.
Very well, I mean, they do review that in lots of different contexts in our society for sure. Also, I was able to have opportunity to meet with surrounding superintendents. Also, the first week of February, and we had a guest presenter at a dinner from the National Equity Project, which also was a very good presentation. They were able to provide some materials. They also have some training opportunities. They've done work kind of all over the place, and it's interesting. I think if you look at much of the work around race and equity, the stuff that's not happening here, also seems to be at which is where the National Equity Project is based, and actually our trainers and presenters at PCMBS, they're down there. But among others, there are probably another half dozen at least opportunities that happen out there. So it was a good conversation. Also a good one to look at for future trainings that we might want to engage in for various levels, all sorts of different actions that we're looking at. And then finally, upcoming, we do have an opportunity. I think we spoke to this before. That same series of meetings with area superintendents and dinners. One of the first ones we had back in November was an opportunity to engage in a upcoming training with Dr. Mohammed Khalifa for the culturally responsive school leadership. So that's actually a conference coming up in, I think it's May. And the Puget Sound ESD is assisting with some of the costs for that conference, and Dr. Khalifa has waived some of the tuition for that conference as well. And the idea behind that was to have race and equity teams and principals go as teams to this conference. So we were able to get a list of people who are interested in going and then working it out. So that will be coming to the board as a travel request and attendance request for some teams to go. I should be getting that in the future. I think this one's really focused specifically on that. The interesting part is, I think it'd be a good conversation to talk about March 11th when we have that training to see how it fits in. But I can certainly take a look at it to see what we have coming. So that's what I have under the racing equity.
No, good. Any other questions?
Yeah, do all of the schools have their charters? Their ruler charters?
I believe so. I believe so. I can follow up on that. But I believe they were all going through that process. Yeah. We just.
I know you did.
Yeah, I'll check to make sure that the others do as well.
Okay, no other questions? Go on to health updates.
Under the health updates, not much on this one. We do have just a couple of updates around. We continue to track COVID, even though you've probably noticed from the federal government, they're kind of officially winding that down as an emergency, which also means that the funding and the support that goes with it will probably be relegated to the same place as other illnesses and infections as they have things going on, viruses. So the support, ongoing support for that will probably go away. We do have some cases that continue to happen from time to time, but nothing too overwhelming, which is also good. We are continually wanting to take a look at anything else that may be cropping up. Right now, we don't have anything else on the horizon, no immediate health alerts in any sort of similar fashion, but we continue to work with King County Department of Health around any ongoing health concerns. I know we have also wanted to maintain the relationships and continue to offer vaccines and physical for our students and families. So we want to continue to offer that as an opportunity. We have a really good partner that Mr. Gerdonov has been able to line up for us and continue to support, and they want to continue to work with us. So I think it's a good opportunity beyond just kind of the boosters as we look towards all sorts of vaccines that would be available. And I think as we do that and continue with that partnership, just people will get more used to it and know that it's a resource available. So we're pretty excited about that as well.
And I saw the slide today about the smile clinic. So dental.
Yes.
Also, those connections.
Dental is good. Yeah, those are all, things that are important. Kind of, you would want all of our students to have access to those.
We know the question.
Right.
But that one kind of just, we used to do that fairly regularly and then COVID and messed that up.
Yeah, there were a couple. There's the dental ones, and then there's ones about eyewear, which I think I referenced before. We used to have a relationship with LensCrafters, and that one kind of went away also I think it was just before COVID, but we are trying to work out something that could help students with any support for vision as well. So we're going to continue to find partners the best that we can for that.
Other questions? No? Okay, so the legislative report. So it appears like probably the big issue in the legislature on education this year is probably going to be special education funding. It started out pretty optimistic. There was bills introduced to fund, you know, I mean, it would be done over 4 years. Anything's going to be done over 4 years, but started off a big chunk of money going in, and now then it's been whittled back, particularly on the House side. The House side had a bill that was going to fund, you know, almost all of it, and then that's now almost shrunk down to close to nothing. So the Senate bill, which is now much better than the House bill, is still in play. You know, frankly, it's all going to come down to, this is one that will, since it's potentially a big dollar number, it'll come down to the very end of session. And they'll go in the back room the day before they dismiss, and they'll decide what they're going to do, and then we'll find out a week later what they did to us. So a lot of it's going to depend on the revenue forecast for the state, which comes out in March, which tells them basically how much money they have to play with in their budgets. And so I can tell you that, you know, virtually every district in the state is pounding away at the legislature on this one. And so we'll just have to, you know, continue to voice concern, and there'll be plenty of people talking to them about it, and then we'll see what they come up with. But it's clearly a hugely underfunded system that needs more money, and we'll see what happens. I think last time Director Hoover was asking about, there's some graduation bills. One of them relates to developing a common state online platform to track with high school and beyond plans. That is, what students think they may want to do and how allow them to explore different careers and so forth. And I believe we are actually, Jennifer Pichanda is already, we've already started that process. So I think that wouldn't really affect us that much. Would require, you know, it actually says OSBI to go out and develop this online platform. We've already have one, so presumably we could use ours, I guess. The other one, which is an interesting one, is it's opening. This is House Bill 1308. Was their high school graduation pathways. So this proposes to add a new pathways that is what they call performance-based learning experience. So it could be work-related, community service, but I mean, there's a whole set of other things other than just, you know, doing the credits and that kind of stuff. And so this one's interesting because it's one of those things that's probably would turn into an unfunded mandate, because it kind of puts on school districts the requirement to figure this out. I mean, you have to put this program together to make sure it meets all the learning standards and all that, and then you have to guide students to figure out, okay, is this right for them or another program, and all of that, of course, is left to districts to figure out, and so puts more loads on counselors and all of that. So I mean, it's a good idea. I'm always for more pathway, for more options for students to graduate. However, it's, you know, it's one of those hidden unfunded mandates things. So I don't know. We'll see where that one goes.
Do we have any of that right now? Where students can go out and have a job?
We do have, yeah, work-based learning.
Yeah,
That's available to students.
so we have some of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This, I think, just widens it a little bit more than what we have currently, but which, like I said, generally is a good thing, but how we you know, put it together and so forth. And yeah, the mandatory recess ones are still in play. That's another one of those kind of potentially unfunded mandates. I mean, everybody's in favor of having more resource, more recess for students, but the question is, how does it get implemented? And then, you know, if comes out of an already packed day, where what do we take out of the day? To,
Or how we add minutes. to the
yeah,
day.
which is another, and then that's the unfunded mandate part, because that's one of the things I say, oh, fine, state, you want us to add more, you know, give us more, a bigger school day, and then they would have to fund it, which they, you know, particular inclinations want to do so far. I'm watching this, 1228, this dual language program support, since we're about ready to launch dual language program. This would give a little more support available for launching dual language programs, which would be pretty timely for us, probably on a grant-based basis, but anyway. It would be good. And if there's anything, if there's anything else that anybody's interested, you go let me know. I can watch it. The other one I will say, the one in the middle, 1244, is raise the levy lid to what Seattle did. So this would allow us to get more local money, but this is just a kind of a thing by the legislature to try and push more money, push more responsibility for raising money to the local level, which is not a good thing. There's districts, we could probably get this extra money in our district. There's lots of districts that couldn't. And so, you know, it creates an inequity problem all over the state if they try and do this. One other thing I did want to talk about, and I guess, you know, Dennis isn't here. So the day on the Hill where all the school districts go down to Olympia on this Monday, February 27th. And I'll be going down, but I guess like Aaron said, he's not available. Our student rep, Dennis, has indicated he wants to go down. So I have to kind of work out some details about, and if there's, we could probably get another couple of students from Post Rescue if they're interested to go down. Right now, the schedule is, everybody's getting together at 8:30 on the Capitol steps, and then we'll have a meeting with Chris Breakall, the superintendent of public instruction, at 9:10. We've got our Senator Bob Hostel at 9:45, our legislator Steve Berquist at 12:25. And they've got a meeting with the governor at 2:30. So should be an interesting to kind of work out, get a meeting with the lieutenant governor. But anyway, it'll be a good opportunity for any students to go to that. So unless there's any questions on things legislative. Okay, hearing none. Go to approval of the consent agenda. Get a motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pass consent agenda is approved unanimously. And I'll go into the questions only presentations. Start with the iReady presentation. Anybody have any questions on that one? So I guess the one comment that I'll make on that, which is this, well, a couple of comments. First of all, I guess we're going to get something I've been asking for a while. When we get these presentations on iReady, it'd be nice to have some analysis of this done by Teaching and Learning, and I think they're working on that. So hopefully, I think, yeah, in maybe March we'll get because we get presentations of data, but then kind of what's the implications, what do we learn from it, that kind of thing from Teaching and Learning side. And you know, one of the additional questions that kind of came up for me was when I look at the rates of first grade percentages achieving typical growth and stretch growth. It's interesting that first grade is kind of low across the board at all the elementary schools, and so, and by contrast, fifth grade is really high across the board now. And so anyway, I'd be interested to hear from Teaching and Learning, and I think yeah, you made the comment about fourth grade scores.
Yeah. because of
So,
COVID.
yeah, anyway, it'd be interesting to hear kind of teaching and learning analysis of that. I did want to check on, I asked for the percent achieved typical growth, and so I want to make sure that these numbers that you're presenting here, these are the percentage of students so for under typical growth. And I'm looking at, for example, Cascade View kindergarten, look at any one of them, but kindergarten percent achieved typical growth reading says 23%. This is the additional one that I have. Yeah, you have it too. Does that mean that, and I think that's your 23% of the students achieved typical growth, which is basically full years, 1 full year's worth of growth within the first half year? Okay, okay, I just want to make sure that's, because, you know, when I look at, for example, 5th grade across the board, you know, like over half the students, pretty much at all the schools achieve their full year's worth of growth in 6 months, which is a pretty phenomenal number. The question becomes, you know, and I think Dr. Duarte has said she's going to look, or I mean, I guess Shelby's looking into this. Those students who achieved that high level of growth, how many of them were at the high proficiency levels versus how many at the low proficiency level? That's the only, and I think she's working on that, so we'll have that number. But that's, I don't know, when I look at that, that's a fairly astonishing number. We haven't seen this number over years, so I don't know if that's typical, but the fact that, you know, particular 5th grade has this huge number, it'll be a really interesting, and the lower grades have a much lower number. You know, it'd be interesting to get an explanation of what's going on there.
Yes.
It's kind of astonishing when you look at it.
Yeah,
So Dave, when you're talking about this, there's a line that if they jump over it, they get. Okay, I don't know, when I was looking at it, I was thinking that they're moving like this. So if they were low tier, whatever,
Hmm.
then if they got to low tier here, that's a whole.
At the whole grade
Yeah,
level, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So it's not like if they were high here and came in low there, that's a whole. Right?
Right,
Okay, it's the equidistant.
pretty
However-
more or less
Okay.
between grade levels, yeah.
Okay, just-
So the problem that I've always had with the way that you presented this originally of the growth is comparing, you know, the fall and the mid-year score proficiency levels, is that there's a couple of problems with that. One is, you know, if a student is right on the edge of, you know, one proficiency level at the top, and they just move a little tiny bit,
Right,
it'll show, oh, they did something good. Well, they didn't do something good.
right.
They only grew, and so
But
that's why,
the growth-
yeah, that's why I like this one rather than
Yeah.
this one, because, and also the other problem with this, the comparison of proficiency is, if you're at the very top, if you're in the highest proficiency, level, you're never gonna show up as, and we want those kids growing at one grade level as well. So that's why I like this one better, and if it's split into, you know, who's the, you know, the 2 or more grade levels separate, so we can see, those are the ones that, because when we have a really successful system, those are the ones that will be getting their stretch goals, and because then they'll grow. And all of this, you know, if we're growing students, proficiency will take care of itself, because that's the thing. So anyway, but it was really, this is pretty rich, and I'm really interested in that, you know, what's going on in the 5th grade and so forth. So anyway, that was just, yeah, and also, well, I guess the other thing, and this may be more a question for Dr. Hershey, but so there's some pilots going on, 5th grade math, right, in the elementaries. Were the pilot curriculum? Are they in some of these classrooms? Oh, sure.
There, I can't.
And that would be really interesting to know.
Like which ones are which.
Yeah, if the pilot ones are showing these fantastic growth,
Yeah.
whoa,
We got that up the other day at Curriculum Council, yeah.
yeah, okay, so,
That's an interesting.
yeah. All right, so anyway, that's a. Yeah, okay. I think that's. The questions I have. And the IRA. Let's see, second review of policy 2401.
In general on the policies.
Okay,
I know that we, in the interest of maintaining the same language throughout all of our policies, we say the board of directors. And I see those are crossed off, and I'm probably the national. If we want to be consistent with language.
I know, is it, sometimes the whole thing's dropped off, so it says the will, that whole subject, is the subject of the other English. The language,
So in order to maintain the same
Yeah,
language, can we stay with
the edit doesn't make sense.
the board of directors? So
Yeah.
that
We have supposed to be board or board of directors.
Board of directors.
okay, I think, yeah, those, that's kind of the next one, 1220 and 1225, that's where I see those, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we stay on 2401, which is, that one's actually relatively consistent.
That one was.
But that's, yeah, so your comment will take that in the next, so 2401, the question I have in 2401 is because it's related to financial education. And so, are we going, I don't really see here a statement that we're gonna, so there's state standards for financial education, K-12. And I don't see in this discussion a commitment to, you know, fully implement those standards. I see what it says. So what we're talking about doing is teaching and learning will be meeting with representative of the ECU to develop a partnership to offer parents of TSC an opportunity to open bank accounts and so forth, so forth. Teaching and learning will reestablish a partnership with Junior Achievement. Yeah, I mean, no, that's one that I'm familiar with we did years ago, which has a really great, you know, hands-on experience down in Auburn to do that. And then we'll award financial education to credits, but I don't see anything that says we're gonna actually, it's kind of like we're telling students and parents, you're on your own. With the exception of maybe Junior Achievement I mean, students are always asking for this, you know, they want this financial literacy education because it's important for their lives. And so it doesn't look to me like we're committing to really provide that to teach the standards.
We're not doing it in our curriculum, but we're telling parents if they go out and find
Yeah.
that curriculum someplace else, they can get credit for it.
Yeah. And so, and I guess it also comes up, you know, if we're, a lot of this, if you look through the state standards in like the early grades, it's stuff that kind of naturally fits into math curriculum. So the question is, you know, particularly as we're now selecting a new elementary math curriculum, can we ensure that these financial education standards are, you know, in our new math curriculum so that in fact, because this is something every student needs, it's not just, you know, some students or those whose parents happen to, you know, sign up with the ECU or something. Everybody needs this. So that's kind of the basic question. I don't know if that's true.
Dr. Borche, did you hear that?
I can hear some of the discussion, but not all of it.
Yeah, I guess we got kind of somewhat crippled, so that doesn't work.
Apparently that's not working either.
Okay, well, let me try
Okay, I can hear you now.
okay. The basic question is, there are state standards related to financial education, which I have a document here. The question is, why can we as a district not commit to fully implementing those financial education standards K-12?
So you're correct. There is a K-12 set of standards for financial education that is offered through OSPI. And in order for us to offer financial education K-12, we would need to find curriculum that supports many of the standards in K-8. Currently, we have a process for this to happen at the high school. Through financial algebra and the work that is being done to create business courses that will offer the 9 units towards financial education. That for K-8, we would just need to go back out and find curriculum that would support all of the standards that are being suggested by the OSPI K-12.
So the question on, or one of the questions is, it seems like it's kind of, when I'm reading through the standard, it's kind of a natural fit into the math curriculum. So, for example, could we say, okay, when we're evaluating, so for example, like we are, math curriculum K-5, I guess, can we commit to say that, we're going to make sure that what curriculum we accept includes these financial education standards in our math curriculum going forward?
We can say that. We just want to make sure that we're honoring and doing what it is that we say, because there are some parts in the money when in our math unit where we talk about money, but we need to also be talking about investing. We need to talk about credit. We need to talk about debit. We need to talk about risk management, and that doesn't necessarily do that in K-5 math. So we would need to find and be very intentional about the curriculum that we select that incorporates all of that.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I'm looking at the curriculum here, and for example, they say grade 2, when you're talking about credit and debit and debt, most of it says non-applicable at this grade level. So I mean, it's so it would just require an intentional review
Right.
of that.
Yes.
To make sure, or at least as much as possible of it, maybe not every last INT, but at least most of it gets in there. So I mean, I'd like to see that as part of the, fit into the process of, as we approve new curriculum, particularly math curriculum. And
Sure. So if that is the will of the board, that's what we will do. We will work to say, we will make every intention through our curriculum to incorporate the K-12, the financial education standards in K-12.
I would support that.
Knowing how difficult it is to find a solid math curriculum, would it be more beneficial if we look at it as part of an enrichment type thing? Because I don't know, I haven't previewed math lately, but I'm thinking it would be hard to find a math series that incorporated that. Is that, I don't know.
So
I
think-
didn't hear that.
So Director Morris was saying that it may be difficult to find a curriculum that incorporates all that, and maybe that's something to be approached from an enrichment side. I would say that, we can take a look at what we have, how many curriculums actually line up with what they, review what curriculums are actually, they may be suggesting from OSBI that line up with that. it could also be that there are cases where the curriculums that line up well for financial literacy don't line up well for other things. So that's why, you know, if we're looking at some of the language that says as much as possible, there could be something like, this is a great financial aspect for math, but it's not so good for ML level learners or something like that. So we would just want to make sure we're prioritizing that. But we can review the feedback on this and then take a look and see what others may have already adopted, or how many other school districts are doing, you know, K-12, the early grades as well.
And you can always, obviously, you know, do supplemental. I mean, if you get a math curriculum that covers, you know, a chunk of it, but not all of it. I mean, we have supplemental materials all the time that could be used to fill in gaps. I think OSPI, I don't think they have they just have standards. Right now, they kind of a while ago, unfortunately, got out of the business of recommending curriculum, which I was sad to see because, you know, it takes some work to review all that stuff. Right. But yeah, I don't believe there's any curriculum. Now, it might be interesting to go check with DECU to see, you know, I mean, they've done, I think, quite a bit of work in this area, what, you know, materials they may have that could be incorporated in or not incorporated in or something. So, I mean, I think there's a variety of ways to, but I think it, you know, the students just consistently, you know, want this information, which makes a whole lot of sense to me. And so, yeah, I think we should try as best we can to get this into them. And for all students, the problem, you know, at the high school with the financial algebra class is only very few students can take that course. I mean, there's just not enough. And so it was great for the students who took it, but you know, not everybody took it, or even close to everybody took it. So anyway,
So Dr. Borche, when you go to the ECU, is that a question you could pose to them about curriculum that they might have?
Yes, that is a question that will be asked.
yeah, because that is on the list. So that's good. That's a good source of information. Okay. There's no other questions on 2401. Now we can have the discussion on 1220 and 1225 about the concern about the edits and how the edits are showing up. Yeah. So, but did we? I don't think we got a reaction or.
Well, look for that. Much of what I see in there is replacing board director with board member. That's what I see edits.
Well, if you look at the, are you looking at 1220?
1220.
So look down at the last paragraph of the.
Oh, up at the top, like the header. that
No.
says duties of individual.
No, the last paragraph.
Okay,
Each is obligated.
and it says
So-
each member. So there's an edit off to the side. Are you seeing? that?
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
this is put in there.
Correct,
I'm just used to seeing what's put in there
right. It's,
being, okay,
yeah, so it just replaces director with
Okay.
member.
got it.
So that's what's off. That's the end.
Right, except all of our other policies say board director, and I'm just wondering if, for consistency's sake. whether
Right.
we-
I think this is we can look and see why there might be that nomenclature change, but that
Yeah.
can also be something. If there's a specific reason why it's moving from director to member, we can update that and the other policies as well. I hear you. We want to make sure it's consistent throughout the policy. Certainly something.
Hey, any other question, comments on that one? If there's not, then let's see, roadmap improvement collaborative update.
I think it looked like it was just something that's trying to be restarted and
Sure.
it may and it may not.
Right. So this is something really more that Puget Sound ESD, I think, is taking control over. The other one, and yeah, quite honestly, you get those changes in leadership and structure, organizational structures, and then
Right.
COVID happening, and so it's really thrown a lot of
Right.
that.
Right, so if they can find a purpose again.
Yeah, and I think the Puget Sound ESD is really dedicated to the they understand the importance of the region. And so I think the work that they're doing with that roadmap and permit collaborative is really helpful, and they're investing quite a lot in that. So, so I think it's a good thing to keep that one going.
So the roadmap project, Community Center for Educational Results, which was the original starting. Yeah, they've kind of, it's still, I'm still trying to figure out a little bit where they're going. So what you're describing is something that's being headed by the ESD.
Correct.
It's totally separate from the Community Center for Education Results. Now, I've been involved in that, a couple of committees in that group since the beginning. One of them is the PLL work group. And I can tell you what they're focused on right now, and I continue to attend those meetings, is working on the dual language bill in the legislature. They're trying to get that through, and that's where they're spending their time right now. The other group I'm in is the data advisors group. That's a group that has in recent times looked at things and published reports like, the waivers, what's going on with the emergency waivers, who's taking high school courses that are related to what they call CATERs, the courses that are required for entry into college, or looking at kind of regional data, education, educator retention, mobility, homelessness in school, mobility. So they have a variety of data sharing agreements with all the districts in South King County, and they're doing kind of their own little studies, which they publish reports from time to time on. So they, that's still going on. A lot of these groups are obviously heavily dependent on who funds them.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, I think for years, the Gates Foundation was primarily their funder. And I'm not sure how much the Gates Foundation is funding them now.
Correct.
Anymore.
Right.
They seem to be, when I look over there, they seem to be hiring people and their staff seems to be there. So that tells me that they've got some stability in their funding, where it's coming from. I'm not sure. They've been much less transparent generally about what they're doing recently. And so anyway, that's what I know about it, because I'm staying involved in those two aspects of it. But
Yeah.
anyway.
And like I had mentioned, when I spoke to Pete Sam, DSD superintendent, well, they're just not coordinating the same things amongst all the districts that they did before. So they used all those reports that you were talking about.
Yeah.
They used to bring up all the superintendents
Right.
and hire it together to have these conversations about how that impacts.
Right.
And those haven't happened for probably 3 years. So
Right.
that's the kind of, like I said, they still exist as an entity. They're just not doing that coordinated work with the districts the way that had happened in the past.
It would be, I think, interesting. I don't either or John Welch or somebody asked. I mean, there is a person who, Mary Jean Ryan, who's the head of that organization. There's a new person out there named, and just
Being replaced.
Yeah.
We talked with her during
Okay.
that transition.
Okay.
But we haven't spoken with her, like I said, in
Yeah.
a couple of years.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to just ping her and ask her what she thinks is going on in her organization. I'm sure she'll have an answer, so it might give a little more clarity. Okay. There's any other questions on that subject? We'll go to dual language update. So this is the presentation by Dr. Borche.
Dr. Borche and Dr. Dino, and they're both online on the presentation.
Yes, good evening once again. Director Larson, members of the board, we're excited about sharing and providing an update on the dual language program and our English language learners. The development of the dual language program and the profile of our English language learners has been a collective effort that has taken place over several years. Tonight, the goal of this presentation is to provide a comprehensive update of the progress of the dual language program that is scheduled to open in August 2023 under the leadership of Dr. Dino, and how the profile of our students explains the need for developing multilingual learning plans and how professional development will support our growth. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dino at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Borchade, and thank you, members of the board. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So Tukwila has made lots of commitments and to dual language over the past several years, which makes it a really exciting place to be right now. And you've taken lots of actions, and we're right in the midst of even more action taking now. So go ahead and scroll to the next slide. Dual language program planning began on or around 2017. One of the earliest actions I took when I came into Tukwila was to learn like what was kind of the history, what has already happened. What I learned is that during the 2021-2022 school year, we also received two-year dual language planning grants, both federal and state, that allow us to grow our system to be ready to welcome students into our program. In 2021-2022, two really big decisions were made. The final school site selected was Cascade View. That was because of the demographics of the school has the highest number of our Spanish-speaking students of our elementary schools. And our program model selection is two-way 90-10. The two-way means roughly half the students in the classroom will be Spanish speakers, and roughly half the students in the classroom will be speakers of other languages. And 90-10 means we will start by having in kindergarten, 90% of the school day will be taught in Spanish with 10% of the school day taught in English. And that will slowly decrease to 50% of the day in English and 50% of the day in Spanish by the time students are in 4th grade, and that will continue to them through 12th grade. One of the things that makes Tukwila so forward thinking with dual language planning is that planning for K-12 now, not just thinking, oh, we're going to start with elementary and in a few years we'll think about what happens in secondary. So I think this commitments that we've made to students already are a great start. Next slide, please. So you might want to wonder what's happening now and who all is involved. Well, really, once you, as Dr. Jose Medina tells us, once we have one dual language classroom in a school district, you are a dual language school district, and that's the frame with which we're operating from. We have 3 separate but very connected groups of people who are providing feedback and oversight into all of the work we're doing for dual language this year and moving forward. We have an advisory team, and that advisory team consists of teachers, family members, community members, students, district leaders, and school board members. This team reviews decisions that are made at the leadership team level and provides feedback. One of the very first things this team did in January was provide feedback on the enrollment procedure, the application, and the brochures that we put forward to our families so that we were ready on January 17th to begin accepting applications along with our kindergarten enrollment. And a really important job of our advisory team is to advocate for the program. And it's been really exciting to see all the members of that team be really passionate and excited to start and grow this for our students. The next bucket is a shared leadership team. It's a smaller group of people. We meet once a month, and we use the OSPI framework as kind of our guideposts. At the end of our process, before kids come in, we'll be submitting what's called a framework to OSPI. And there are several different components of what are best practices in dual language programs that we need to have completed and be able to submit to them. This team is well on its way to having that particular framework completed. It consists of myself, our multilingual learning specialist, Dr. Fremstad, the principal at Cascade View, and Mr. Draganov, our Executive Director of Human Resources. We all come together, we look at information, we review, we have different hats, and that's really important to have different lenses on what's happening. And then we bring forward recommendations to the advisory team. And if you move on over to the next blue circle to our principal team, it's important that all principals and district leadership have a really good understanding of what we're starting here and how we're working together. Dual language is a component of how we support multilingual learners. It's not the only component. So it's important that those two things can work in concert. Like I said before, Tukwila is really working to build a K-12 dual language program. That means we right now want to hear from people who are at the middle school. We want to hear from people who are at the high school, so that we're building a robust program as we go. And that when we come to various program evaluation elements in a cycle every 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to make sure we're putting forth our best, the best that we have for our students. We can go to the next slide. Into more of the details. In January, lots of things came to came to a head. We posted for our kindergarten teacher position. We already have applicants, which is excellent. Our shared leadership team that we talked about before convened for the first time. Our dual language advisory team convened for the first time. Our enrollment materials were finalized, our applications were open, and our district and school leaders participated in a full day of learning from the Education Impact Exchange. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to take a look at who are the students in Tukwila, what do we want for them, what do we envision for them, and how can we all work together to make that happen. In February, our shared leadership team and our advisory team convened again. Right now, we're working through some mission and vision work, and we'll come back and finish that in March. Our dual language information, our multilingual specialist, Pedro Lopez Chavez, provided information at our kindergarten information nights to families. Thank you to all of our school principals for welcoming him in to come and bring applications and talk about it at all of our schools. We will be holding teacher interviews later this month, and our district and school leaders later this week will be participating in our second leadership training with the Education Impact Exchange, and will be focused a lot on the experience of the multilingual student in Tukwila schools. Next slide, please. This spring, there's still a lot happening. Our shared leadership team and dual language advisory teams will continue to meet and provide feedback back and forth to one another. We will identify what materials are necessary for instruction, because when we come to teach students in Spanish next fall, we need to make sure we have high quality materials and that we have plans to provide professional development for our teacher to use those. Our applications will close on March 3rd, and presuming we have enough students to fill a classroom, we will start holding a wait list at that time. If we have more than enough for a classroom, we'll hold a lottery. And if we don't have quite enough, we will notify those families who've applied before March 3rd that their children were accepted. They will need to tell us that yes, indeed, they do want to do this. And then we will move forward. We will be hiring a teacher this spring. District and school leaders will continue to participate in sessions with the Education Impact Exchange each month, growing our work together and our collaboration cohesiveness, which are really important to center multilingual learners. I keep connecting that with dual language because, again, dual language is a component of our overall multilingual learner supports in Tukwila, and we have so many students who speak other languages at home and bring those gifts to us. We want to bring the best back to them. And we'll be working on a professional learning plan, because professional learning is going to be key and important, not just for the teacher who's going to be teaching in Spanish next year, but for all of the adults who will be in and around that orbit. Next slide. And we're just super excited. We know we're going to have students right for their first day of kindergarten in the fall of 2023. Before we left, I checked and we already have 13 applications. So our classroom is over halfway filled. So I'm super excited about that. Now I will take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Dino. Do we have any questions?
My only concern with this is that all the students in the district are not being catered to by having bus service. If their student does not live within the Cascade View bus area, they have to provide their own transportation, and that's a concern. And I was wondering if there's a way we could remedy this.
And do we take board action to change that procedure, or do we just ask?
That's something that we have had some conversation about, and we certainly wanted to look at where the interest is coming from. That's a concern. I'll be honest, in every district, in the districts where I've been that have dual language programs, which include 4 other districts, that's always been a concern, is how do you offer that opportunity, especially in the districts that are a lot bigger, because a lot of that proximity does happen. So I think
we are very small.
correct.
The distance between the schools is not
Absolutely.
that far.
So part of this is having conversation with our transportation department, just about bus driving and things like that. And to look at what other opportunities there might be for alternate transportation rather than a big bus. And then figuring out what the cost of that may be and what the impact of it is. So you can always make almost anything happen, but there's always a cost to it. And sometimes you have to find a driver to be able to do that as well, which can be a challenge. So we just want to make sure we can meet any of those logistical challenges before promising that we can actually do that. So that's part of the action. I mean, it's legitimate and valuable feedback because we want to have that as an opportunity. So that's something we will continue to look at to see if we can resolve that.
Thank you, Dr. Lino, for that great presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the only, I think this is, as you say, it's part of the overall strategy. We know we have some significant achievement gaps with our Latin students, and so this is one of the strategies that we can use to help close those gaps.
For sure. I can, just a little bit of anecdotal information. When I was in Bremerton, we had a dual language program in elementary as well. And by second grade, the students who were enrolled in kindergarten were outperforming native speaking English students on state tests who were in the program. So it's really an incredibly rich opportunity of learning for any student that's in the program. So it's a great opportunity. The board has been so supportive of the effort. And obviously we have a lot of staff who've been working hard. Ms. Chen before, Ms. Dino has picked all this up and she's gonna bring it across the finish line for us. So Dr. Dino is doing an outstanding job and working well in tandem with Dr. Borchet, coordinating all that with all the staff. So it's a lot of excitement. So it's nice to see it coming to fruition.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm impressed with one of the things that when we started talking about this years ago was to how do we kind of learn from, the districts around us and the best practices and all that, but it sounds like that's all been extensively folded into this process, which is really good because, I love it when we can, basically pick something up that some other districts have done a lot of the initial work on and just take that and replicate it. And that, we always turn out better when we do things like that. So that's great.
I'm really interested in the education impact exchange information that's coming to whoever's attending this. If it is about how we help those who are coming from other languages be successful, it sounds like it's something that everybody should be taking in this district and not just dual language. So how do we share that information out? Because I even need it for my work. So how do we share that? Or is there a plan? Or have I got it all wrong?
So I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing. Are you asking how we're going to share what we're learning from the Education Impact Exchange?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're doing this year is really working on developing our principal and district leadership skill set. And then next year, as we move forward, we'll be taking the things that we've learned and worked with them and working on more of a robust professional learning plan for multilingual services for other staff in the district, certificated and classified.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other conversation on this one? If not, we'll move on to the next presentation, which is our ELL, MLL, as we're transitioning to the term multilingual services, I guess, from ELL, and that is Dr. Borchet.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dino again. Thank you.
Great. Hello again. As we dig into kind of where we're going with our multilingual learner initiative, it's really important for us to think about kind of who are our students. And there are 1,000,001 ways in which we could slice this data in Tukwila. But the way that I looked at, I'm presenting it tonight, again, it's just one way, it's not the only way. If you can go to the next slide. If we look, and they are students who attend all of our schools. We have a little over 1,100 students who currently qualify for multilingual services. That does not mean that they are the only speakers of other languages. As you can see on the graph on your left here shows you by grade level, by school, how many students are qualified at each grade level. And on the right, you'll see the languages with greater than 15 students who qualify for multilingual services. So you will see that we have 432 Spanish speakers who qualify for multilingual services out of our total 719 Spanish speakers district-wide. Some of them will have never qualified for services because they exceeded the screener when they took it, and some of them will have exited from services. When you look at our Vietnamese students, we have 70 who qualify for services and 171 of those students district-wide. Somali students, we have 80 versus 145 district-wide, et cetera, et cetera. I point this out to show when we think about our multilingual learner service plan and how we want to support students from a very asset-based approach. That means celebrating what they're bringing with them and using that to help them grow even more. We want to think about our students who are qualified for ML services and recognize that there's a ripple effect for the students who are multilingual learners who maybe don't qualify for services as well. Next slide, please. We also know what our students can do in English. The reason I say can do is the WIDA Access is our new assessment for students. Washington State joined the WIDA consortium just a couple of years ago. We used to belong to a different one, and so that means we use a different test and there's different standards. And one of the really excellent things with the WIDA standards in particular is they come with what are called can-do descriptors. And so that's another asset frame with which we look at what our students are able to do in English instead of thinking about the things they can't do already in English. So if you look at, these are last year's Access Composite scores. So these are kids who are current first graders through current 12th graders, what their scores were last year. If you look in the developing column, which is the third level, 309 students, so a big chunk of our students are in that developing range. On this particular assessment, when you get into the expanding range in grades 1 and 2, if you hit the expanding range, you are exited from services right there when you get a level 4 composite. For grades 3 through 12, when you get a 4.7, which is within that expanding range, you also exit services. We do monitor you for a couple of years after you exit, but what we notice is we have a big group of students who are right there on the cusp of moving from being qualified for multilingual services to exiting. And what research has shown us from other tests in other states, including students in Washington State as well, if students can exit multilingual learner services or whatever you would have called it in the past, those students who exit later on outperform their monolingual English peers. So that exit matters for us because we know it is an indicator of their ability to really exceed standard as they move forward. Next slide, please.
I just interject, we've seen that in our district for years, that exact phenomenon. So yeah, it's true here as well.
Yep, we absolutely want to get them to exit because we know that means great things for them. We might be wondering what's different about WIDA as from before. A key component is that WIDA is centered around 4 big ideas. We need students to have equity of opportunity and access. We need to integrate content and language. We used to think kids had to learn English first, and then they could do math, and then they could do science. We know those 2 things can come together, and they need to if we're really going to serve our students well. We know collaboration matters because if a individual adult is working with a individual student, we don't know what the rest of that student's day looks like, how it interacts. We don't know all sorts of things, but when adults work together and collaborate, and this says stakeholders, that means parents and kids too. We want students to know, here's where you're at, which tells us you're able to do these things. Here's the next shift and step forward for you for making goals for this year. And here's how we as a system are going to work together to support you. It's a very functional approach to language development. The standards themselves have a social component, they have a math component, they have a social studies component, and they have a language arts component, recognizing that students are learning language across the day, and that comes back to that whole idea of needing to be integrated. It also breaks down those standards into our 4 key language uses. How do we use language? We narrate things, we inform about things, we explain things, and we argue about things. It doesn't mean we get in a fight all the time, but we definitely have to be able to share an opinion and why we think so. So those 4 key language uses can embed reading and writing and listening and speaking, and they go across a student's day. WIDA really recognizes the whole student, not English language development as its own individual standard. That's a huge shift in thinking. It's a huge shift in stance, and it's a big shift in where we think kids learn and where we need to provide some of our resources. Next step, next slide, please. This comes through Tukwila Multilingual Learner Initiative. This is something that Tukwila developed previous to my coming, and it's an umbrella because there's 3 big components: being student-centered, from mono to multilingual perspectives, meaning language is being learned all the time, and linguistic liberation. We appreciate and we know when kids come with more than one language, that they should be free to use that language, and they should know that that is what helps them be an important part of our community. We need to increase our culturally linguistically sustaining practices. That's where WIDA becomes a springboard for us. Like I talked about before, dual language is one piece. It's not the only piece. It's the piece that this year we're really digging into and fleshing out so that we're ready to welcome kids in the fall. And that as we move forward into the next school year, we'll be digging into, so what are we doing to support all those other kids who aren't in the dual language classroom? And what are we doing to support all those teachers who have multilingual learners who are not in that dual language classroom? We can move to the next slide. And that's where we come to kind of our next steps here. We will be providing professional development across the next school year to increase teacher toolkits to develop language and content simultaneously. Like I said, that's been a shift in Washington State over the past couple of years when we moved from the ELPS to WIDA, and it's a shift for us instructionally. We know we want to decrease our dependence on pull-out and standalone courses. We have 15% of our students in Tukwila who have been in qualified for multilingual services for more than 7 years. And when we look at those kids, the majority of those students have started in our schools. We want them to be able to exit, which means we need to provide something that is fundamentally welcoming to them and showing that they can learn language and content simultaneously, that they can come together. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not a switch we turn on. That's why we're working with principals this year and the Education Impact Exchange every month to develop their skills and toolkits so that principals will be ready to work with staffs to develop multilingual learning plans in conjunction with their school improvement plans for next year. It's not separate, but it's a way of, as Dr. Borsche tells us, centering our multilingual learners in the work we're doing because they are such a large group of our students. And what we know, we talk about things like best practices. You probably all heard this before. Oh, that's just good teaching. Some things that are just good teaching are essential for our multilingual learners, and we need to make sure that that's the instruction that they're getting every day. Any questions? Thank you.
I'm just curious, the WIDA standards, the testing, how do they test for these different areas of emphasis? Do you have any examples of what's on their test?
So part of it is they use a lot of headphones and microphones. There's a speaking portion where there will be asked a question and the student has to speak into the microphone to answer that question. There's listening where they'll listen to something and then they'll choose an answer. There's a writing component, and then there's reading small passages of text and answering multiple choice questions for that. It's not meant to be super high cognitive demand because they're really looking for that language component. You'll note go ahead.
I see that on that right-hand chart, but on the other one where we're talking about equity, integration, collaboration, functional approach. Is that, do we have a curriculum that builds that, or how does that happen to get the kids ready for those?
It's not about buying materials. It's about making sure we have a really robust instructional toolkit. Like, what are the ways in which we're choosing to instruct? How are we having students engage in discourse? How are we setting up classrooms for kids to learn from one another, more so than making sure we buy the right book or we have the right manipulative.
So this is the PD that the teachers are getting, working with these kids.
Yes,
So
this
it's
is what
all-
this is what we're building for them for next year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That sounds
Yep.
wonderful.
Other questions? I guess I just wanted to, I asked for this diagram of, you know, how many students are, the ML's duration in
Favorite diagram, segment. My favorite diagram. Yeah.
yeah, this is the one I think we need to see every year on the, because this will tell us basically if our system is working or not. And so we have way too many students that are out in this over 5-year area. And so this is great because we can monitor this and see if what we're doing is actually producing the results, which all the research, by the way, says that we should get from this. So implementation, although implementation is the key part of all this stuff. And so as we were talking about, you know, the instruction, I was thinking about, so I'm in the robotics classes I'm working with, you know, I'm working with some students that, you know, are not native English speakers. And, you know, it's interesting to watch them. There's some instructions that are put in English, but they actually have to do some manipulations, some drag and drops and different things that they're doing while they're, and so they can see the connection to the word based on what they're doing, you know, which is really an interesting, I think that's a great way to, you know, as you're talking about integrating the content and language, so both at the same time, so they can see that that's right in a really effective way. And I know our kids are picking it up. So anyway, it's done. I'm excited about this. This is really great stuff, and we appreciate your work on this and look forward to hearing great results in the future.
Thank you.
Carly's on.
She came back for
Oh,
action.
Oh, yeah.
She had mentioned before she had needed to step up.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll go to the action items. And let's see, the first action item is approval of policy 3117. Can I have a motion? Been moved and seconded that we approve policy 3117. Any discussion? No, hearing none. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. All four said aye. Moving to the next one, approval of human resources staffing report. Can I have a motion? Then moved and seconded, we approve the human resources staffing report. Is there any discussion? Questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 It's unanimous. Human resource staffing report is approved. Can I have a motion to approve resolution number 927, interfund loan?
Second.
So moved and second that we approve resolution 927 interfund loan. Are there any, I don't know, or CFO, did you want to say anything about this particular one, or I don't know, or just take questions?
I mean, if you have questions, I'll take them.
Okay. Are there any questions on this? Okay, we've done it before. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It's approved unanimously. So now to the final public comment period. Do we have any public, anybody either in the room or online who wants to make any public comments? You can raise your hand in Zoom or put your request in the chat. Seeing the here. But we're not seeing the young line, so. Okay, closing the public comment. And a motion to adjourn. And moving second to adjourn, all here say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I think that, like I said, we'll find out. I think it's the- We don't.